One of the key mechanics that can easily be overlooked in Elden Ring is Great Runes. These powerful unique items are dropped by bosses who are Shardbearers, meaning some of the most powerful bosses in the game. Some you'll acquire naturally from mandatory bosses, while others come from optional ones. There are a total of 7 Great Runes you can gather across the lands between. Apart from one, you'll need to activate them all at a Divine Tower after defeating their respective bosses. After that, you can equip a Great Rune by visiting a Site of Grace and using the Great Runes option. Once you've equipped your desired Great Rune, you can activate it by using a Rune Arc, which are items you gather from drops, chests, and even certain vendors. Your Great Rune's effect will last until the next time you die. The buffs and boons you gain vary from one Great Rune to the other. So if all of that is sounding pretty interesting, stick around in this video where we're going to give you an overview of all of the Great Runes that you can acquire in the game, along with their respective effects. First, we're going to start with Godric's Great Rune. Godric's Great Rune is the first you'll acquire in the game. As the name implies, you'll need to take down Godric the Grafted in Stormvale Castle. Once you've defeated this brute, you'll be a stone's throw away from the location where you can activate his Great Rune. Activating Godric's Great Rune with a Rune Arc has a simple yet powerful effect. It'll raise all of your attributes by a whopping 5 points. It's an incredibly useful catch-all effect that fits pretty much any build out there, particularly strength and mage builds. This Great Rune is activated at Limgrave Divine Tower. Next up, we have the Great Rune of the Unborn. Also known as Renala's Great Rune, this one is the only one of the set you do not need to activate. In fact, once you've defeated the Queen of the Full Moon and acquired her rune, there's nothing else you need to do with it. It essentially unlocks the ability to respec your character by speaking to Renala herself and selecting Rebirth. Coming up, we've got Morogods' Great Rune. The third and final mandatory Great Rune can be acquired by defeating Morgod, which is the real identity of Margit the Fell Omen. Once you do battle with him in Leyndell and best him in combat, he'll drop his Great Rune, which you can then activate at the Divine Tower of East Atlas. Using a Rune Arc to activate Morgoth's Great Rune will boost your maximum health by 25%. The multiplier is applied after all of the HP increasing buffs you get from equipment and effects are added. This Great Rune is a pretty solid pick for tank builds or when you feel you need some extra leeway in particular boss fights. Next, we've got Radons' Great Rune. Radon is an optional boss and a tough one to boot, but you'll have to work your magic on him because his Great Rune is pretty good. Particularly for builds such as Moonveil Katana and Bleed, the 15% boost to health, FP, and stamina is pretty strong and edges out Godric's once you've reached key stat soft caps. To activate this Great Rune, you'll need to reach the Divine Tower of Caelid. Coming up, we've got Reichhardts' Great Rune. Fighting this grueling battle is an optional affair, but if it's a Great Rune you seek, then you'd best be prepared. Taking out Reichhard, Lord of Blasphemy, will grant you his Great Rune, which gives you a lifesteal effect when activated. Specifically, you'll restore 80 HP along with an additional 7% of your total health each time you defeat an enemy. It's not a bad option, though its applications may be quite limited. To activate Reichhardt's Great Rune, you'll need to pay a visit to the Divine Tower of West Atlas. Next up, we have Millennia's Great Rune. Millennia is a tough boss, but her Great Rune leaves a bit to be desired. After downing her, your reward is a rune with an effect that grants you a buff when you get hit. This buff gives your next hit lifesteal for 5 seconds. Subsequent hits will reset the buff. Overall, not a particularly strong Great Rune, but a fine addition to your collection, I suppose. Millennia's Great Rune can be activated at the isolated Divine Tower. And finally, we come to Mogs' Great Rune. Mogs' Great Rune is pretty cool, so it's worth fighting him just to acquire it. Upon activation, it grants your summoned spirits from Spirit Ashes a Blessing of Blood. This has several powerful effects. For one, they get a pretty cool red smoke aura around them. They also gain a lifesteal effect that returns health to you when they strike foes. On top of that, they also gain extra buffs which last for 20 seconds when they inflict blood loss. The cherry on top though, the effect of the Great Rune is infinite so long as the spirit remains alive. In order to activate Mog's Great Rune, you'll need to once again pay a visit to the Divine Tower of East Atlas as you did with his twin brother Morgott. And that's going to do it with this video. If you'd like to know where exactly all of these Divine Towers are and where to go to activate each of these Great Runes, you can hit up the full article on Fragment Shader, and we'll see you in the next one.